comparing a Coocheer chainsaw to a PDTO. These are both Chinese chainsaws, model 5200s. And what I did is I put 2 gallons of gas through both and did some interchanging of parts. And I want to give a review to explain what's good and what's bad. Now, it's not just about Coocheer and PDTO. This is a PDTO sold as a 58cc saw. It's 52. They're all 52. Same thing with the Coocheer. It's shown as 62cc, but in reality it's 52. They mark them from 45cc all the way up to 75, but they're the exact same motor. So, the $80 Coocheers, there's a whole bunch of saws out there. They keep changing names on them, and you can usually distinguish between these two saws based upon CCs and price. The Coocheers usually are about $130. Again, all these $80 chainsaws are going to be pretty much the same. It's usually the same sellers that sell them on eBay, so you can figure out what's what. So what happened? 2 gallons of gas. Let me show you. First of all, on the Coocheer, the pull start went bad immediately. After 2 pulls, right out of the box, it broke. And since then, the housing is broken. I've tried to glue it together. There was a design defect. Both saws had a bad pulley in them, exact same defect. And so clearly the company knew what was going on. Now, pull start's $7, but if you get an easy start, if you've never used an easy start, get one and try it. Because the Coocheer came with an easy start. They're a $16 option if you buy a new one off of eBay. They're well worth the money, and they're just fabulous. So the Coocheer gets an A, the PDTO gets an F on the pull start. Second thing was that about 1 gallon of fuel, the oil pump went bad on the PDTO, and I had to replace the oil pump. Now that's a $5 problem, but it sure takes some time to remove it, and you got to watch a few videos to get there. The air filters are different on these. You can see the PDTO air filter is not really that large, but if you look at the Coocheer air filter, it is about double the size, and so you're getting a much better quality air filter. And of all the parts that are not interchangeable, this is about it. You can see there's a different size cover for the two. The PDTO has a longer cover but a much smaller air filter, where the Coocheer has a shorter but taller air filter. I cover these with pantyhose because the screen is so porous on these saws, and it doesn't matter which one you get, it's so porous it lets fine dust in, and it coats with oil and puts a thick coat inside your carburetor of dirt and dust when it mixes with that oil. So you need it, but when you put an extra cover on it, a piece of pantyhose or whatever, you got to adjust the carburetor because it starves the engine for oxygen. And the bars, oh, this was something. The PDTO bar, the first bar went bad really fast. I thought it was because the oil pump went out. So I switched out and took a PDTO bar, put it on the Coocheer to see what would go on, put a brand new chain onto it, and the bar went bad before the chain got dull. One chain. Didn't even make it through. I took a pair of vice grips, I tightened up the rails to try to make it last a little longer. It worked for a little longer, but the metal was so soft I could tighten it with a pair of vice grips, and I've never been able to do that with a steel or Husqvarna bar. So the PDTO has a bar that's totally worthless. That's 20 bucks. Now the PDTO, and a lot of these will come with 2 chains, these $80 chainsaws. And the 2 chains were average quality chains. They're kind of like an advanced cut Oregon. So I was really pleased with getting 2 chains. 1 chain with the Coocheer, that chain lasted, I compare it to an Oilmatic, a good Husqvarna type chain, or a steel Oilmatic. That's the way it looked. Fabulous chain. I'd like to buy a couple dozen, but I could figure out what manufacturer it was. So the PDTO again gives you 1 chain, but a much better quality chain. The chain brake snapped on the PDTO right there at the small point when a tree fell. I didn't think it was enough to make it break. And the chain breaks another $10. And then the PDTO didn't want to start after about a gallon. Actually, it did start after about a gallon of fuel, but when it would get hot, it wouldn't start. So I had to put a new ignition coil in, and that solved the problem. Again, another $10. So the $80 chainsaw compared to the $130 chainsaw turned out to be a lot of parts replaced and you got up to the $130 anyway. Now, I learned a lot about how to repair a chainsaw, and that's kind of the fun of buying something cheap and going through the mechanics of it, and learning how to replace the oil pump and the ignition coil was a real trick, and I feel better for it. So when I bought these, I ended up with two for $80 a piece. Since the recoil starts broke, I contacted the seller and said, hey, these are defective. They gave me massive discounts. I think I had $20 or $25 a piece into each one of these PDTOs. So, you know, in summary, if you want to buy one of these Chinese model 5200 chainsaws, regardless of what they say their CCs are, they're 52, trust me on this one. You know, look at the price. If they're in the $80 range, you probably are getting a saw that's made with defective parts. And I believe it's intentionally done with substandard quality parts on the PDTO. Whereas the Coocheer, with an easy start and the good bar and chain, that's, you know, you're better off spending the extra money. Now, they don't make PDTOs anymore that I can see. They've changed the name, and I believe they change the name ever so often because people get wise to the crappy quality. So, you know, the best thing you can do is take a look at the pictures on the eBay auction. You can look at the number of CCs to see if they match up to the last $80 saw there was. But more importantly, look at the pull start. If you got an easy start on it, more than likely they're putting extra money into it because it's going to be a good quality saw. As for the motors I believe are identical. I believe there's not a problem with. For the clutch does work a little better in the Coocheer. It's a little slow to start out. The spring seems to be too strong in the clutch on the PDTO. You know, I'm very happy I bought the PDTO, having 20 bucks into them, and having a spare one that I can, you know, get parts off of, and the parts shipped from China are just dirt cheap. But, you know, in summary, what I would do, I don't know, I'd probably do the same thing since I got mine for $25. It's been fun. I learned a lot, and I've just worked the crap out of these saws cutting cedar trees, and I think the motors are going to last a long, long time, and I think the PDTO is intentionally designed defectively. So if you buy an $80 chainsaw, kind of expect to get what you got in this PDTO. Good luck with your Chinese chainsaw. I'm sure you had a lot of fun with mine and put a lot of work into them.